Alrighty. My name is Kara. I am from the Unova Center, and I'm so glad you're here with us. I'm really looking forward to our discussion tonight with Pritam Atma about her first book, Mystical Motherhood. If you're new to our book clubs, welcome. I want to share a bit about Unova before we jump in though. We are an acupuncture and Chinese medicine clinic based in New York City. We specialize in fertility and reproductive care, but we treat a wide range of conditions. As of recently, we moved part of our practice online so that we can virtually support our patients, but our clinic doors are open again and we're available for in-clinic acupuncture and massage. Before I hand it over to our wonderful guest, I want to share a little bit about her as well. As I said before, her name is Pritam Atma, and she is the author of 3 books, the first being Mystical Motherhood, second is Fertile, and soon to be released, Alchemy of Becoming. She's deeply connected to bringing conscious children into this world and teaching women that they are genetic engineers. She currently works as a nurse practitioner in a fertility center within the New York area, practicing reproductive medicine. She also works with women privately and in groups, helping them to apply the concept of mystical motherhood and fertile to increase their fertility and consciously prepare for motherhood. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Pritam.
Thank you so much. And we're in a lot of alignment with Unova. So we met because I was speaking from my fertility center. And then I found that my personal work actually aligns with Unova Center profoundly. So we chose Mystical Motherhood for this month's book club. And I wrote 3 books in about 3 years because a lot of information kind of flew through me as I began to awaken, starting back, like just change my life, change my spirit started to guide my decision making and my destiny. And I heard the words from my teacher: when the frequency of women changes, the entire world will change because they birth the women, the children onto this planet. And it was almost a miracle how I found this teacher. And I said, that's what I have to teach, that exact sentence. And it's like in that moment, my entire destiny fell through the roof and it went into me. And I was like, how do I teach women how to increase their frequency before they conceive? And then my life just opened up and I personally changed. And I saw motherhood as personally going through it. So my background is in birth work. I've studied with Ina May Gaskin. I've worked with the hospital as a labor and delivery nurse. I've worked in antepartum, postpartum, active deliveries, hundreds of them for many years. And then I switched to become a nurse practitioner and went into family practice. And then I went into specifically fertility because I love to bring life onto this planet. And in my books, I recognize that there's no theories that really show how important the period of pregnancy is. I just lost you. Hold on, let me open this up. Am I still there?
Yep, you're here.
Oh, okay, I thought I lost you. There we go. So I have never seen any theories from all my education of how important the period of pregnancy is. All theories of development begin when the child is born. And so I really so my second book focuses on the theory of development within the womb. But I also saw that there was not a lot of information out there for mothers I think motherhood, it's made to look so easy on social media. It's made to look so extravagant and so beautiful, and it's really difficult. And I remember having my first child and thinking, this is how we can awaken. This is exactly how we can change the planet, is by changing each of the mothers and really showing them, going from a neutral position of, this can go this way or it can go this way, but let's take the steps in our lives to fully awaken and change ourselves. So mystical motherhood took Maslow's hierarchy because it was a great theory for building development, for building self-development. And I just listened to spirit basically on each section to create. And I was in Europe traveling the Rose Ley Line specific section or specific parts of the world where there's an energy of the Holy Grail while I wrote these books. And so I wrote these books in that, and I actually published Mystical Motherhood while I was in Mary Magdalene's land in France. And so I was in the energy of all of this to really understand motherhood while I was doing it, which is a whole nother story. But I would just open it up for, I know that was kind of random. I lost you for a second, so I got off track. But I'd love to hear any questions you all have about either Western medicine, about Kundalini Yoga that is specific to this book, about meditations, how to increase your consciousness. Each of my books focuses on various spiritual technologies that can help you raise your consciousness and your frequency to bring these children through and to raise them.
That's perfect. I think to kick this off, I just want to talk about my favorite quote in the book. I don't know what it was about this, but it kind of made me stop, and I was like, oh, I have to write that down. It's when you said the best way to weaken the strongest group of people on the planet is to make them hate themselves through propaganda and massive advertisements from the time that they can speak and understand English.
Right.
And I feel like that kind of sums up basically this book. And I would love to know, maybe not your favorite piece of advice, but the one you give most often to women that you're finding are struggling with their body image.
Body image is huge. What my work really does is it reduces generational patterns, and I mean it knocks it out. And so generational patterns are belief systems or society or things that keep us limited, things that box us in, things that make us feel small. And in this Kundalini lineage, Yogi Bhajan is one of the teachers of it, and he really focused on the women. And just like Dalai Lama said, you know, the women of the Western world of the future will change this planet, right? And so their women and men are very different. They have their different qualities. And what he teaches is that women can be 16 times more neurotic or 16 times more intuitive than a male. And we can go either way. And so in my work, I always teach that we can be either creative or we can be destructive of ourselves. So getting out of these deep patterns of destruction is really difficult, and it takes time and energy. So with the eating disorders, you have to look at the family line, and you have to look at how you were raised, the words that were used around food in your life, and how much we dislike ourselves and how much energy we're wasting on our thoughts. If we think about how much we're thinking about what we're looking at, you know, what we look like, or looking in the mirror during the day, or maybe changing our clothes or changing our makeup, we're wasting a lot of time and energy that can be put towards creative product, or, you know, products such as a book, or such as work, or such as helping people. And so these meditations, what they do is they raise your self-esteem, and they allow women to increase their frequencies so that they don't have these sort of negative thought streams. So the mantras that are mentioned in the book and the specific meditations will take you from the negative mind to the positive mind much easier, and make you, you know, settle within the neutral. I hope that kind of helps, but these are just deep ingrained, you know, patterns within our epigenetics, really, which is what the second book is about, that need to be changed. And the fastest way I know how to change it is through Kundalini Yoga.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff. I have some questions about that, but we just got one in the chat. Thank you for speaking with us tonight. I love the idea that having a disturbed gut can lead to choices that aren't the best. I wondered if you could talk a bit more about that and what it means for future children.
Well, all of the studying I did and all the books that I was brought were, I mean, when I write books, I listen, and I receive a pattern of how to create a book. And then I'm like, okay, what do you want in it? And the way that the information is brought to me is beyond God. It's unbelievable. And so each of the books I was received for this to include in this were amazing. And so what we have to realize is the gut is like the brain, and it carries a knowledge. Your body carries a knowledge just as much as your mind, or just as much as your soul. So in epigenetics, the programming of the DNA has to do with your diet, your environment, your thoughts, and your emotions. And so I forgot what the question specifically was, but it was like, how does this create the baby? So if we know, so there's a man called Bruce Lipton, and Bruce Lipton, about in the 1980s, saw that DNA was programmable, and that it changed based on its environment, and that these four concepts, the diet, the emotions, the thoughts, there's four of them I just repeated before, but these all create the DNA of the child, of the embryo. So whatever was in your microbiome, which is in your, as you're developing the child, will eventually turn into the cells of the baby. So I go deeply, deeply into this in my second book, Fertile, in much more detail. That's kind of hard to get into within one, 30-minute lecture. But but you have to think that diet's important, but I think that women, we focus on just diet because it's the beginning of the awakening process. The physical body is what we have to work through as we begin to change and as we begin to awaken. So you do that through body work, you do that through yoga, you do that through changing your diet. And then as you become more subtle and more subtle, then you go into your emotional body, then you go into your mental body, into your spiritual body. And these body systems are just as important as the gut system within, when you're creating children and when you're creating consciousness. And though they're tangible, though the microbiome is a tangible thing that we can change, so are emotions, so are thoughts. And I believe that they're all equal, just to give a different perspective on that, because I don't think we think of that really.
Absolutely. So going back to the yoga that you were touching on, I know that the exercises in the book aren't what we would technically think of as yoga, but they're kriyas.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you had a favorite one.
Oh my gosh, I am a hardcore practitioner. And so I preach what what I teach is what I preach, and I don't ever teach anything I haven't embodied. And so the books I write or the meditations I provide are something like that I've really embodied and done. And with meditation, I talk about this a lot in the Mystical Motherhood podcast, but it's better to meditate every single day and to pick one to go deep into. And I find that when people come to me, there's so much in the world, and our attention is the most precious thing there is on this planet. And also our consciousness is the most precious thing that there is on this planet. And there's a war for it right now. And there's a war for it on all kinds of levels and all kinds of agendas, if we're going back to, what's really happening, but also our first discussion. So to own your own consciousness, to be sovereign, is very special and very rare. And that's to think your own thoughts. And the only way we can think our own thoughts is if we get to know who we are and who we're not. And that can be reflected in our environment with the people deeply through relationships, but it also can be reflected with an internal practice you do every single day. And so I chose Kundalini Yoga because it's the fastest thing I've ever found that changes you quickly. And so I describe it as a phone app. So if we are a phone, an iPhone, if we are technology, I'm an actual technology, I take up meditation and I download it onto my phone. And that can be done through a class, or it can be done through a daily practice. And then I become that meditation. That meditation sometimes can be used every single day, and sometimes maybe even in a future lifetime, sometime as a better mother. But I change quickly, but yet also slowly over time, I see progress through these meditations. So it's better to pick one and do it for a long time to create a relationship with it. And then as you create the relationship with the meditation, you become the meditation, and then it heals within other people. So for example, one that I did for years was Jupiter Chakra meditation. And Jupiter Chakra meditation is for trauma. And you could think that like it could be a little trauma or no trauma. We all had it. We all believe there's something in our family that our mom or dad did not love us the way we wanted to be loved, right? So then we have attachment issues, or we don't get what we're supposed to do with our highest destiny. And so if we do this meditation, your career will then take off, because your thoughts aren't about your food anymore. Your thoughts aren't, the thoughts aren't about not eat, like all the thoughts we waste time and energy on become more focused because we're healed in those areas, if that makes sense. And so if you're becoming, and then if I can tell you what specific meditations to do for specific reasons, but the ones I chose for Mystical Motherhood are just a few, but they're specific to motherhood and chosen for specific reasons.
Yeah, they're all incredible. And I definitely identify with the trauma one. Just generational. I was chatting with my mom about it, and it's just like, she's like, yeah, the things I do, are from my mother. And it's like, yeah, I know, mama, keep
Right.
pushing that right along there.
But this generation's changing, and that's why so many people are finding this work, is because the mothers are like, oh, there's more to this. There's more just than diet. There's also the way I'm treating them, and I'm becoming my mother, or I'm becoming my father, or I'm married my father. And it's like, okay, well, the only way to change that is to change it within, and that, these technologies, spiritual technologies, help.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Um, Another thing, obviously, the biggest theme is you talk about conscious conception and calling to the soul. Um,
Yeah.
and I'd love if you could just talk just a little bit about that, what it means, how to
Oh,
do.
yeah.
I love it.
So I traveled for years to really understand and embody this. I actually had to go to the sites of like, what does this mean to bring down a conscious child? And I believe when you go to these specific sites, you actually get the energy. Or I wouldn't have been able to really embody it or understand. I would just be talking from a place that didn't make sense. So what I teach about epigenetics is actually what the yogis have always known. So the saints and sages of the past, when I went through all these different documents and understood what the yogis did in the past, is they would spend many lifetimes actually with the same person or and planet, or an entire lifetime to bring down a saint and a sage. Now we're in an accelerated period of time on this planet now, and the information needs to get out faster. Hence Kundalini was released, and it gets you accelerated much quicker than anything else. To give an example, Kundalini was secret. It was never provided out to the public until we are now going through this different age and time. So people need to accelerate their consciousness to match the technology that's going to hit this planet even harder soon. And so that's why I call it all of these a technology. But the type of children I believe that are going to be coming down are going to need a higher frequency. And so in order to do that, you have to create. So before, I'm going to describe it from the point of view of the ancient yogis. So there, and the point of view of science, because I like both science and spirit. There's a period of genomic imprinting that happens before the egg drop. That's about 3 months before you actually ovulate. So if you're doing IVF or you're planning to conceive, there's a really sacred period of time that you can affect the actual DNA within the eggs for 3 months. And this is called genomic imprinting. It's found in science books. It's just not talked about a lot because you can't prove these things. Consciousness can't be really tested as much as they like it to be. So in my book, Fertile, I go deep into, behavioral epigenetics, which I briefly mentioned before, and the things you can focus on. Now, from the moment of conception, that frequency, your frequency, and I talk about this, your vibration should be very high. And you can get your vibration high in however you'd like to do it. But I mentioned Kundalini Yoga in the book, but you can do what you need to do. That could be nature, that could be self-love, that could be baths. I talk about high sexual encounters, bringing down energy. That could be acupuncture. It's just a period that you're focused on you and your partner. But if you're doing IVF or IUI, you can continue that frequency. Maybe a lot of yoga that day. Then up until the 120th day. So in the yogic field, the day the man ejaculates inside of you, it's not the day of conception where sperm enters egg, but actually the ejaculation. And then, when an IUI is completed, or when the actual embryo is transferred, that would be the first day. Up until the 120th day, you are talking to the soul you want to bring down. So you're intergalactically connecting to a higher soul in your prayers and meditations, and you're asking for a high soul to come down. You can you're raising your frequency so much so that you're on the 120th day or around that period, you will bring down the highest soul possible. Now, we don't have to believe this is true. We can just say, okay, I don't know if it's true. But I asked every woman I know, and they all said, yes, around the 4th month, I felt a complete difference. And I believed I started to connect to a child within me. So this is a thing that mothers all document that happens for them. And it's also when the period that you're not going to lose the child, happens. It's when the body really settles in. So from that period on, from the 120th day through the rest of the pregnancy, is the most important period of motherhood there is on the most important period of motherhood. It's when all the genetic engineering takes place. And so to bring down these high souls, you begin to connect to something higher. You have to trust your intuition. You may use symbols, you may use signs, things may come through. You can ask questions from that, but is that too much information?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It actually made me think of, you chatted about even before you were starting to conceive, the period leading up to it and how you should prepare and really think through all that has to go into it. Do you think that's a good time as well to start calling out for a soul, or is that later?
You can start as early as you want. So the saints and sages of the past started for 40 years. They made it their entire life. Like Mother Mary, these ancient birthers, the mother of Guru Nanak, these people, these mothers, these women that brought down these saints, they created that. And so I researched ancient, before I go into the ancient ways of bringing down birth, I want to just say, if you accidentally become pregnant, you didn't plan it, or you didn't do any of this in a past pregnancy, do not feel bad, because you're just doing your best now, and you can still change and become a better mother and let go of these patterns completely. I'm not into any guilt or neurotic things about it. If you find out you're pregnant randomly, all you have to do is work from your whatever you did and expand that. So just become better every single day as much as you can, but don't have guilt around it. But with these women that would bring down these saints and sages, what I researched through these temples is the temples were actually, I don't know if this is going too far out there, but the temples of these ancient birthers were actually aligned with the planetary systems around the world. And so all of these ancient temples, when the matriarchy was actually running the planet, before, I don't know how long ago, around Greece, around Egypt, around these different places that I went to, they were aligned with star systems. So they were aligned with planet Sirius. They were aligned with the Pleiades. And then they would use symbols. So the birds and the bees and different sounds. And so in my book, Fertile, I go into the importance of what is consciousness. Well, consciousness is our senses. It's our sight, our scent, or our smell, the colors around us, the way we're feeling, right? It's those things. And then it's also the sounds we're hearing. And so when they would conceive in these high temples, they were using, high music, sounds, colors, and they were actually doing something called the hieroskamos, which was using light. So that it's going a little bit farther outside of the range of mystical motherhood, but consciousness is really all of these things. And so these high birthers that would birth these high caliber children were using all of their temple work really to bring it down. It's really cool. And so the birds and the bees and all these symbols are, actually from the temples, from the Temple of Delphi, they were the dove, and they were connected to the planet Pleiades.
I
Yeah.
did not know that. I'm sitting here now trying to
It goes
contain.
way deeper, but that's just, I don't really bring that up as much because it's a whole nother book.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
glorious. Speaking of fertile, we had another question.
Mhm.
Could you share with us what the lessons are from mystical motherhood that would help prepare readers for fertile?
Um, I think there's no lessons. Mystical Motherhood is a really good introductory book for anyone who's just ready to make really easy changes in their life. Um, Fertile is really understanding pregnancy. And so mystical motherhood is for women, motherhood across the board. Like you can be a mother that, a grandmother, or you could be a mother that, an aunt. Anybody could read mystical motherhood. Now with fertile, also anybody could read it. It's actually more about consciousness, but it's for the couple, like a man and a woman could read it to really understand pregnancy. But it just for fertile is really about the pregnancy period and about the conception and about how important the genetics is, how important that period of motherhood is, because I only included a tiny section on that in Mystical Motherhood, but I went really deep in a full book on it. And so it's better actually to read it before you become pregnant, so you realize how important the period is. And it doesn't include anything on any yoga. It just looks at science and spirit. And it looks at the embryo's development and how the embryo is connected to sacred geometry as it's developed. And each of the sacred geometry symbols, so I actually received this in meditation. So as an embryo develops, like I was talking, the sound, the taste, the smell, and the overall vibration of the mother matters. So each of us have an actual frequency. We have an energetic signature. And so that energetic signature is transferred to the embryo, which is then, as the embryo develops with sacred geometry, all of these are connected to the elements, which goes back to acupuncture. So the fire, the earth, the air, the water, and the ether. And so I break down the elements into how we function in an external environment and an internal environment in a really easy way, so that you can see how to manage your emotions and manage the period of pregnancy a little bit easier.
That's going to be a really good conversation too. Oh, yeah. Amazing. If anybody has any questions too, you can feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or type it in the chat. Otherwise, we have one more question and then we can start wrapping things up.
Okay.
So our last question, unless anybody else has any more, is in Mystical Motherhood, you touched a little bit on work-life balance and preparing. And they were wondering what your advice is on finding that balance in this current context where so many of us are working from home right now.
I'm going to say something that's probably would not be a typical answer, but if you get up and meditate every single morning before the sun rises, you will find more time and energy in your day than anything else. I feel like people feel that they're going to lose energy or lose time with meditation, like they don't have enough time for it. But what you will find over space and time is that it expands it. And it creates so much energy within you and so much positive thinking that it doesn't really matter what's going on throughout the day. Like the work-life balance, everything will flow more naturally. It will flow with more joy. So getting up before the sun rises or doing that practice, it will change your entire relationship with your work and also with the workflow balance. And also a really good tip is to play the mantras while you're working. And especially if you're trying to become pregnant, and you can all email me and I can give you specific mantras, but just Google white sun and the mantras from white sun and play them at night and during the day. And that's going to change because it's really not about the work-life balance. We can't change anything on the external. We can only change our internal response to it. So if you do these simple things from this book and you choose a meditation and you go deeply into it, then you add these mantras to your life and you have them going and you do it for a period of like at least 6 months to see if it really makes a difference. Your vibration will change, and then your response to the environment won't matter anymore.
That's great. I know for myself, I've really been trying to get something going because, something's got to give at this point, right? But you just made it seem so simple. You're like, you don't have to get up 2 hours early if that's just not in alignment. You can get up 10 minutes before you normally do and just
have to do something.
Right. Yeah. And you were saying that just like little spurts every day is better than doing like a long 2-hour sit once a week.
And then you'll do it more often. And then you also have to notice if you transfer your stuff onto the thing. So if we let go of the food addiction and then we create the spiritual addiction, you're still just transferring the addiction. And so you have to monitor like your response to spiritual practice is like, okay, so you missed a day, whatever, just sleep in, don't get after yourself. Then you're creating more neuroticism with that. You're just do the best you can do every single day. And if, for example, if I miss meditations, I just sing more, I just turn the mantras on and I sing to them. And then that's it. I already feel better. So just doing your very best. Yeah. They work quick, so you don't have to do them a long time. They're for the householder. And that's why I love them. And the kids love them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the kids love the mantras. Yeah.
Very fun stuff. So
If
fun.
anybody wants a specific meditation or has a question about a specific meditation, um, let me know if they need one or.
Okay, perfect. So for anybody, if I know sometimes hearing all this information, you just have to process it. But if you have questions afterwards, where would you like them to reach out to you at?
Go to mysticalmotherhood.com. There's my podcast is there, and the books are available there, and any private sessions, and I would answer all questions for you.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. We will send a recap email with everything we chatted about, and I'll include Pritma's all of her information and all the ways you can reach her. And this was so great. Thank you so much for spending the time with us tonight.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And we look forward to chatting with you soon about Fertile.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I hope I didn't jump forward, but just it's all one work.
Not at all. It's perfect. We can't wait.
Okay, thank you guys. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a great night. Bye, everybody.